I will get started. And before I actually leave the floor to the protagonists of the day, of this afternoon session, I would like to spend a few preliminary words. First of all, I'd like to introduce myself. I was collecting all of your bios, but I haven't introduced myself. I'm curator at the National Portrait Gallery in London, where I'm committed to a 3-year project to incentivize the presence of women in the museum's collections. The way things are, there are 58,000 male characters when it comes to exhibitions and works of art versus slightly more than 6,000 women. Before that, I was curator at the Tate Modern and even earlier at the Guggenheim. I've also been a teacher at the UCL University in London, and I'm still curator on behalf of many museums, institutions all around the world, MACMA in Barcelona and another museum in New York. That's it. As far as I'm concerned, I'd love to introduce the topic of the panel before I leave the floor to Maresca Compagna, who has just joined. So in a historical moment such as the one we're now experiencing, being hit by social distancing and hit by shutting down of museums, so the topic of inclusivity, of course, is taking a brand new form, a brand new meaning. Past months have asked us to reconsider museums beyond their walls and consider new digital space, new digital environment. We'll be launched into the future in a very swift manner. Notwithstanding, museums have reacted and they've developed some inclusion ways so to create some long-lasting relationships with both the existing audience and also how to open up new relationships with audiences that have been distant apart till now. So by default, of course, some of the museums and some of the content have become more accessible and less distant through this digital form. So the purpose for this panel is to interact around strategies and tools when it comes to audience analysis, fundraising, relationship between public and private. So that is the need to very much diversify our end audiences. We'll capture many different points of views and hopefully multiple ideas. In the end, perhaps we'll come up with some potential strategies to adopt. This was very much it as far as my introduction. I'd love to leave the floor to Adele Maresca Compagna. She's the president of ICOM Italia, which I'm introducing shortly. So she is been chairing ICOM Italy since 2019. She's been vice president of that same organization between 2013 and 2019. Ever since 1982 till 2014, she was the head of research and publication for MIPACT, and she is being committed through research and well in this case I have a very large bibliography like cultural heritage and others, so she has touched base on many different topics. So I'm happy to leave the floor to her. Let's see if I'm able to leave the floor now. Good afternoon. I hope you can hear me. And by the way, I have some issues here because I am not familiar with this platform. So I don't know how to allow the camera to be switched on, but perhaps it is not so much important for you to see me. And actually, I'm asking you if you can actually share the slides I've shared with you, if this is not a problem. Well, I'm shortly resuming the floor because we can't have two people speaking at the same time. Unfortunately, there's no way that I can share the slides, otherwise you will not be able to speak. So if you actually go and click on the left-hand side button at the very top, there's a plus sign, and you will see three different options. The second option is called screen sharing, and that would allow you to share the screen with everybody else. Yes, just bear with me. Hope you can hear me. Hope you can hear me okay. Can you hear me? Hello? Yes, we can hear you okay, but the minute you speak, I cannot reply in talking because there's only one person at a time that can actually speak. Okay? We'll go with thumbs up if that's okay. Okay, that's fine. No problem. I will be delivering my presentation with no slides. Okay, I don't want to take any more of a time. Apologies. So, at the floor, right? Yes. Okay. So, good afternoon. Thank you to the organizers for welcoming ICOM to this very interesting panel, speaking through these very interesting topics. Before I actually deep dive into the key topic and say what we have done in ICOM over the last few years, I'd love to speak through the current vision of museums and what is the current context that operators are moving through. So cultural heritage topic has changed over time, starting from 70s from conference in Santiago in Chile, and then Grenoble 71. We now, for simplification purposes and for sake of time, I would just say that we shifted from a one definition to a different definition in cultural heritage up until the last one shared statement from the Faroes Convention. So heritage is no longer what is being codified by institutions and legislations, but heritage is also what is being recognized as such by all individuals and communities. This means that they're also taking co-responsibilities of the storage, of the transmission to the future generations. Now, you all know about it, of course, but it was just to remind us that there's a changing mindset going on, even in those people working in museums and museum institutions. So we've said for some time that attention has been shifted from object to people, from collection to audience, well, to the different types of audiences, to be more accurate. So when it comes to the objectives of museums, more and more we come across need to valorize, to co-participate. This also means, to go back to today's topic, that the task of those who are attracting the audience and tell about the value of collection, it has become increasingly difficult. It is no longer sufficient to describe the artistic features, technical, historical features of works of art of artists, describing those as experts and specialists, if you will. But it is now also important to share uh, this vision with people visiting museums and those who want to access museums and cannot for many different reasons, and we'll see why. So providing also an on-top interpretation of what we would just consider to be as a heritage for everybody, but of course it needs to be reinterpreted also on the basis on everybody else's vision as well. So there has been a very strong debate in ICOM with regard to museums in Kyoto 2019. Outcomes are still uncertain. The thing is that we're now asking museums a lot more than what it used to be in the past. It is now covering a social role. Museum is asked to promote sustainable development, to disseminate active citizenship values, to favor conversation amongst cultures, to impact on social well-being and cohesion, as well as on economic growth of territories. And Faro's Commission insisted on that heritage is also a resource on top of being a value. So it can be a resource for everybody. Now, ICOM on an international level is being super active to promote additional participation and greater accessibility and inclusivity altogether. And UNESCO advice recommendations from 1960 around the most effective methods to make museums accessible for everybody. And you could tell from the title how innovative that message was. And UNESCO then back in 2015 spoke about the importance to preserve diversity of museums as well as their role in society. And those recommendations have been written and published also with the support of ICOM. ICOM has also shared its view around political aspects as well, with the objective to fight against discrimination, race, social status, age, and ethnicity. And unfortunately, I cannot share the slides, but there were some campaigns that we've run. One in specific around the role that women should play, with a twofold repercussion. First of all, envisaging women attending more museums, generally speaking, but also through the representation of women in collections and the way museum describes it. ICOM also had a say also around the recent unrest in the United States, social discrimination, Black Lives Matter, and so on. More specific, I'd love to remind you all that in 2020, ICOM has organized the International Museums Day, May 18, which is fully devoted to a single topic. This year has been called Museums for Equality, Diversity and Inclusion, to call out museums for some actions that should be executed to overcome stereotype, to contrast imagination, and to execute outreach initiatives to be able to speak and reach out to those people who are struggling to access museums, for instance, people in prison. And also to develop more democratic values by creating shared narratives. ICOM Italy includes 2 different commissions coping with the general issues about how to access museums. On one side, accessibility per se, and the other one, mediation and education. And that reports to the International Committee SECA, which is promoting education and cultural promotion. We have coped with this topic over the last few years. Most especially, we spoke around mediations and how could we best train new people for these new professions. And by the way, there's also plenty of literature available, and also some additional tools were then published after Turin meeting in 2018. Well, actually, let me say that this year in May, although I could not organize initiatives in person all across Italy, still we did launch a clear message to museums professionals trying to organize, well, what we did, we organized an online conference, online event, running through equal opportunities and hence the title Equality. So equal access to museums as well as to the values of museums, which have to be granted to people who are considered to be different because of sexual orientation, ethnicity, culture, religion, language, or else perhaps they live in poor education status or they struggle from an economic standpoint. So this is why we have promoted some good practices to overcome prejudice and biases and to remove barriers which are hampering access by from these people. And there were many professional attendings, Bodo, Giaccheri, Mannino, Giovanna Brambilla also attended. These people, they coped with these topics, highlighting the difficulties that we're still coping with. Also trying to highlighting the importance of doing something about it and avoiding the top-down approach. So we don't want that to happen. My time is over, I'm afraid. I'd love to just say that this conference will be followed by other events. So ICOM YouTube will obviously share all of the presentations from the speakers today, and also from this May event, which I've spoken about. And I'm pretty sure that more initiatives are to come, so that we may work and check all together what are the best practices and good examples that we may leverage. Something happened in Brera and also in Uffizi in Florence. So the bottom line, and let's say the key objective, the key goal, is that we want these initiatives to be fully fledged, not only to promote cultural heritage, but also translating that into a new frontier for integration and inclusion. And as I said, many more initiatives are yet to come. Now, for sake of time, I will start. We'll see whether I'm giving the floor later on to say something more about it. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm sure we will devote some time to a final debate. That is also part of today's objectives. I'm so sorry for technical issues. Unfortunately, I could not help anymore. I will now leave the floor to Remo Tagliacozzo. I think he's with us, right? It should be there also. And I will introduce Remo Tagliacozzo first, and then I will leave him the floor. He's the sole administrator from Zetema Progetto Cultura. Up till 2017, he had important roles within the Italian Aerospace Research Center, also dealing with corporate governance and legal affairs, as well as secretary of board of directors. He has developed his professional career in a multinational context, and he has worked for the Health Service Division in Siemens. As from 2017 till 19, he was managing director for Zetema Progetto Cultura, and then he became sole administrator in 2019. That's his current role. And his company is fully participated by municipality of Rome, and it has to do with storage, archiving, promotion on behalf of the municipality superintendents in Rome. He deals with a number of topics, also welcoming tourists from all over the world to take advantage of the cultural heritage in Rome/Italy. I would be happy to leave the floor now to Mr. Tagliacozzo, if he can take it. He's there, but I can't see him. So meanwhile, while we wait for Mr. Tagliacozzo, there's a hand sign on the left-hand side that you may refer to if anybody has a comment with regards to what ICOM Italia presented. So maybe we might have a few minutes for debate. I have a question, actually, a very simple question. With respect to this event you organized in May, this conference you mentioned, what was the most surprising thing, the piece of innovation that you would love to see fully fledged in museums, whether in Italy or elsewhere? Something that very much struck as a surprise. And I leave the floor back to you then, Maresca, Compagna. I'd love to say that the one thing that I was most surprised about, and I must admit I had never taken that perspective, was from Nicole Munuzen with respect to sexual orientation of visitors. That is a aspect, that is a topic that I had never taken into a serious account. That I never paid attention to better say. I was also very much struck by Giovanna Brambilla's presentation when she mentioned initiatives taking place in Bergamo to support people in prison, to allow access to people in prison. And that is why I would invite you to go on YouTube and listen to that debate. There's no rhetorics and there's no any triumph-based statement, because both speakers actually highlighted all of these aspects that they're struggling with, and something else that I was very much surprised about is that there was a strong invite not to be too emotionally involved either. So to still be very, to still approach that in a very rational way. Now, I have to admit that Mrs. Brambilla, she worked with adult prisoners, people in jail. In some other cases, you might actually work with um, younger people being in jail. So there might be different ways, but irrespective of the age brackets, I would say that perhaps these initiatives should be further nourished and pursued. Um, the one from Maria Chiara Giaccherici also clearly showed that discrimination and prejudice actually dates back to the moment when you're choosing the works of art that you want to exhibit and the way you consider captions. So what matters only it is what is missing, not only what is there. So what is missing, the one thing that has been neglected, perhaps things that have been overlooked when it comes to introduce the artist, and and that is not, as I said, made accessible to people for any given reason. So that was all surprising to me. Thank you. Thank you so much. I think, yes, that when it comes to gaps and what is neglected, overlooked, it's something that we should look at more. Meanwhile, I understand that Mr. Tagliacozzo is there, so I will be happy to leave him the floor. Yes, there I am. advantage of. So it has to be affordable money-wise, but at the same time, we have to let's say increase and broaden up the base of the visitors of the audience. So what I aim for is a bottom up approach, and for us to do that, we will have to also consider data mining. It will be data saying to us what we're supposed to do and how we're supposed to do it. It's getting more and more interesting to see how people move around, how they go for the decision making. And because we're boosting culture in Italy, and culture and tourism, they cater for 25% of GDP in Italy. And we have lost close to 100 million tourists to date. So, of course, we are reporting important loss on that. So that is why once the risk assessment has been made, we will have to replace what it does no longer happen in person, which likely is not going to be the case for the next 3 to 4 years. So that is why we should definitely approach a different way, and the digitization. At the end of the day, if we want people to still have their job and go to work every day, we have to ensure companies can afford it. And I also would love to say that private museums and foundations are open. So thank goodness somebody is patrolling the cultural education environment, but many others, public institutions, they shut down and they're closed down. This has to change also because we now have new tools. We have project financing and the 3Ps support that shall also include museums. And we have to come to realize that the client, the visitor, is influenced also by our behavior. Hence, I do envisage for a strong brand identity, a more powerful one, which will help us attract more people. Because they will see us, the way we behave, the way we're open, and we're opening up to them. And that is something that is still not happening. So now, forgive me for this very fast presentation, but the bottom line is that we have to come to the point of saying that we cannot just give out anything to anybody, because the public funding, of course, will not be able to support as effectively as it used to be in the past. And if we want to draw inspiration from what is happening elsewhere, I mean, abroad, we should go back to Italy, because all countries are focusing on 1 and 2 museums only. And if we're taking Louvre is taking 85% of public funding. So all virtuous models, of course, we do analyze them, we look at them, but we are very much different from anything else that exists outside our country, because of the enormous amount of beautiful works of art we have. So we have developed even an hashtag during lockdown, I stay home/culture, and I think it has been visited, it's been mentioned 40 million times, and that is because we've been able to supply a number of interesting services, not yet fully digital, but let me say that they've been entertaining people stuck in their homes. And this is something that is perhaps become the departure point. We will still continue to supply culture promotes supply of culture as a universal human right, and hopefully in the medium long run, and that is something that we are considering, and I love to tease the scientific community here. Perhaps we should go more for revenue sharing, where the product that we do supply becomes more appealing and easier to take advantage from. We often say that the cultural industry often is self-referential. I don't believe this is the case, but in order for us to avoid it, we might do even more from a communication standpoint. And this is why I mentioned the Italia model, and not to mention the circular economy, which is even more important for sustainability purposes, because the industry of culture in Italy gets very, very close to what we know about this circular economy. So I'd love to close now. And I'd love to leave the floor back to you, and I'm happy to welcome questions, if any.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for your speech. Obviously, well, you see, it's very interesting to compare different perspectives, your managerial point of view, and also what we heard earlier. So now I'd like to leave the floor to the next speaker, and then we will have some debate after the next speech in order to keep the rhythm of the day. So now I'm going to leave the floor to Federico Borzelli. If he's ready, I saw that he was connected. And well, I'd like to introduce him, and then I will give you the floor, Federico. Federico is art historian. He deals with art, cinema, music, three passions that have always been at the center of his work. Starting from 2013, he was responsible for Maxxi of marketing activities, and starting from 2016, he has promoted a very important activity on the territory, but as a national model. He was the creator-curator of Maxxi Art at Work, which is the project alternating school and work. And he will introduce this project to us today. Well, in my opinion, since I'm a person who lives and works abroad, this is a very interesting model on how to integrate and involve the new generations into the world of museums. Thank you. Well, with my speech, as you said, I will tell you about the Maxxi project. The Maxxi project is addressed to students, to the younger ones. Well, first of all, good afternoon to all of you. As Ms. Frigeri said, together with my colleague Giulia Masini, I'm in charge of the school work alternation project at Maxxi. Maxxi, the Museum of Rome and L'Aquila. Hopefully, in a few weeks, we will inaugurate the museum also in L'Aquila. We have staff responsible for education and training. And well, and that office deals with school and work projects. So we create projects for schools with very articulated proposals, well-structured projects and proposals, trying to satisfy the different needs, different requests, and the objective is to actively involve families, professionals, students, disabled people, etc. And so we have our staff, our group, little group, and in 2016, Maxxi Artwork was born. And we made sure that our previous background So the previous background that we had piled up, thanks to our professional experience, previous professional experience, we managed to draw up this program that makes reference to the reform for a good school in Italy. So in Italy, starting from 2017, there is an obligation to have this sort of alternation between school and work experience. Well, actually, it already existed, but it was just for technical secondary schools. And now it is for all secondary schools. So what is this project about? This is a project that allows students to share and have an experience of the professions of culture. So explain always how, for who we organize a cultural event or an exhibition. This is a very complex project that involves all the Maxxi staff. So we have managed to have artistic directors, curators, people responsible for communication and marketing. All of them spoke to the students, as well as some external professionals, for example, advertisement agencies, video makers, some other professionals that are usually involved in different processes within the life of Maxxi. So our teachers are many and really varied. And also some artists came and spoke before the students. And photographer Battaglia was the first one who spoke to the students. And this was very prestigious for our project. So direct witnessing is very important because it gives us the chance to find out about what is backstage in the world of culture. So Maxxi is about the arts of the 21st century. We use all the expressions, all possible expressions, and therefore we can involve many professionals. This is fundamental. So having some witnesses or some professionals speaking directly to the students. And this is fundamental in terms of training. Our colleagues help us make students understand what the job is about, what it is about, as I said. And at the same time, it also gives an orientation. So what they should study in order to become a curator, in order to become a marketing expert, and so on. And then we have, experiences, direct experiences through workshops. That is to say, they put themselves in the shoes of the various professionals involved. In order to introduce this sector to the students, we use different methods in our curricula. We have, online activities. We have webinar classes, and then obviously we also have storytelling experiences, different forms of expression during our workshops, as well as some quizzes or treasure hunts. So it's very lively. It's a very very rich program, very rich curriculum. Julia and I work in close contact with the teachers. So the program of Maxxi Artwork is based on a co-planning with the students and, of course, also their headmasters. We have the before and after. I mean, before and after the lockdown. The lockdown we had in March in Italy made us transform everything into an online version with some difficulties in the beginning, but it's going really well now. We're now at the third edition. It lasts 1 week. For 5 days, the students spend the whole day with us online. So in this way, there's a major involvement, 100% participation of the students, and also, and also it's very interactive with the students. Without the Chamber of Commerce of Rome and the Chamber of Commerce of L'Aquila, this project wouldn't have been sustainable. And also Lazio Innova, which is a branch of Lazio regional government, is an institution that is helping us replicate or export the project to other provinces. And then we also collaborate with Sapienza University of Photography, and also the Academy of Palermo. I have a very short presentation, if I can show it. Can you confirm that I can show it? Okay, all right. Right, so this is the cover. This is mainly what I've just told you, the three pillars: training, experiencing, and orientation. In order to trigger the critical thought of students who become the protagonists of the project. Well, as we said earlier, ours is a format we would be very interested in sharing this project with other museums. We are available. And as you could see, we are already collaborating with Sapienza and the Academy of Fine Arts of Palermo, because we want to be at a very high level. The three main fields where we work with regard to Maxxi art workshops, we have a lab dedicated to the creation of an exhibition. Then there's a program dedicated to cultural marketing. So there are some projects that are related to territorial marketing, and then communication and promotion of the cultural asset. So this is also related to digital communication, social networks, and not only that. One thing that is really important to me is that we have involved 63 between our colleagues and external professionals, 63 operators. Well, this is something that it's quite important to highlight. We have worked with 39 secondary schools. So far, we have worked with more than 2,550 students of any school. And we have produced more than 1,800 hours in total between classes and workshops. And we have also collaborated with many organizations, also Zetema, as you can see, we have met them. We've taken the students to their museums. Maxxi is not just limited to Maxxi. We don't feel we have to stay only at Maxxi, but actually we want to take the students to other museums because we want to take the students to Rome libraries, the Festival of Cinema, and many others. Then we also have the open house. With open house, we have been carrying out a project for many years, and then we have collaborated with many other cultural events. What we really like is that, 4 Bocconi students, Ca, Foscari, La Sapienza, and Tor Vergata universities have dedicated their dissemination thesis or graduation thesis to us, to Maxxi. So some of them made more statistical research, some others focused on our format. Now I'd like to show you a video. It's very short, only a few minutes. In collaboration with the European Design Institute. Well, in this case, we worked with them. So let's watch the video. I hope it works. All right, so this is only a short video which shows what the students do with us. These were students from an art secondary school and also a technical secondary school. So you can see we managed to bring those students to our museum, and they were very creative. And I don't know if you saw that 3D model where Maxxi Museum was transformed into a slide. So that was the result of a workshop with the students. And then, well, in the video, you can see some more figures, but I'm not going to read all of them. This is a survey made by Giovanni Schifo, a student from Tor Vergata. And Annalisa Cicerche is the teacher that worked with him. And they tried to understand what Maxxi artwork means for the students. Well, the relationship with the tutor. And also here it says, well, have you managed to understand something about what is backstage, backstage in the museum? And so the atmosphere, question about the atmosphere at Maxxi Museum. And then this other question about future orientation. So if they got an idea, if they received a suggestion about their future orientation. So Maxxi boasts to have a project that is going very well. And I must say we are sold out for the entire year 2020 and 2021. Well, there are very few museums that are working in this way, so alternating school and art experience. School and work experience related to art in our case. And obviously it is necessary to have an online platform in order to carry out the project online like we're doing. And this is a project, as I said, that we're doing in Rome and in L'Aquila. Even if the museum in L'Aquila is not open yet, we are, however, we are working with the schools there already since 2019 in order to make sure that also the students in L'Aquila have the opportunity to participate in the project. Well, this is all from me. I hope I will respect the time that you gave me. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's great for us. Thank you. Thank you so much for this very exhaustive presentation about a beautiful project. I'm sorry that when I was in secondary school, there was nothing like this. Otherwise, I would have loved to participate. However, the students are extremely lucky now. I know that Mr. Tagliacozzo wanted to show a video, so I've asked our technical assistants if they can find the video and show it. So now let's move to the next speaker because we are slightly late, but then we will show the video as soon as it is ready. I hope it's okay with you. And also now the floor, and now we're going abroad. We're going to look at an international perspective. So we're going to see how other professionals in the art world are managing this topic of inclusivity and diversification of the public. So Julie Leclerc.
L'opzione di lingua.
You may still follow by selecting your target language. So you can click on Italian.
Is the Director of Traveling Exhibitions at Ingenium, Canada's Museums of Science and Innovation, supporting the corporation's mandate to encourage Canadians and people from around the world to learn about STEM and its impact on our everyday lives. Julie's passions for Canadian history, her pride of being a science geek, and her love of travel has come together into the perfect job. She is a board member of ICOM, and with no further ado, I will pass it on to you, Julie. I'll make you the speaker now.
Buongiorno, good morning, bonjour, from Ottawa, Canada. A very snowy morning this morning. So I'm going to be speaking to you about accessible design for exhibitions, and I will share my screen. Hopefully that works, because it does not work for... So hopefully you can see this. I can't see what you're seeing, so I'm hoping that...
I'm quickly stepping in. We can't see it. You need to press the button to the left, the plus button, and that should give you 3 options. And the central one is share screen, and you need to click on it. We've had a few issues before with it.
I'm trying, it's not giving me the... will not make any sense without any slides. I'm going to try.
You know what, maybe we could move on to Cecile, who I know we've resolved this issue before in terms of sharing screen. And maybe in the meantime, Julie, I can drop a line to the technical assistants and see if they can step in and help you out. Sounds good. Okay. Cecile, I hope you're happy for me to go ahead and just introduce you. So Cecile Shellman is a full-time consultant providing diversity, equity, accessibility, inclusion, and anti-racism services for museums. Her experience includes having worked in leadership capacity for Carnegie Museums of Pittsburgh, heading initiatives at the Carnegie Museum of Art, Carnegie Museum of Natural History, Carnegie Science Center, and the Andy Warhol Museum. I guess you've covered the territory, I think it's safe to say. And in the past, she's worked as Director of Visual Arts and Exhibitions at the August Wilson Center for African American Culture. She was Program Manager for Pittsburgh Public Schools Culturally Responsive Arts Education Initiative, and plenty more. So she is an extremely well-versed and experienced speaker, I think, on the topic of the day. And I'm just going to make you a speaker now.
Buon pomeriggio, good afternoon. I'm Cecile Shellman. I'm very happy to present today on the topic of diversity and inclusion in museums. I'm going to be sharing my screen where I'll have a brief PowerPoint presentation. I have had nearly 30 years of experience in the museum field, and in addition to my consulting work, I am the immediate past chair of the American Alliance of Museums Diversity Committee, and I am currently a senior diversity fellow with the Facing Change program at the American Alliance of Museums. I also was a committee member with the Facing Change working group, and I continue to consult with more than 50 national and international museums in the topics of diversity, equity, accessibility, inclusion, anti-racism, and anti-oppression in museums. In 2017, after creating a new strategic plan, the American Alliance of Museums convened a working group on diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion. 20 museum professionals, including myself, representing a variety of disciplines, met together monthly at their offices in Arlington, Virginia, and once at the annual meeting of the AAM in St. Louis, Missouri. For 6 months, we examined the characteristics of effective museum inclusion practices, and we considered what steps the field could take to promote diversity, equity, access, and inclusion. This committee was led by the Alliance President and CEO, Laura Lott, and a lifelong DEAI leader, Dr. Janetta Besh-Cole. And we were asked to identify current activities in the field related to diversity and inclusion. We were asked to try and understand key challenges, issues, and opportunities in promoting DEAI. We were asked to listen and learn from how other sectors have successfully overcome challenges regarding diversity and inclusion. Next, we were asked to name steps that museum professionals could take to advance diversity and inclusion in the field. And finally, we were asked to outline opportunities for collaboration and further work. This process took us to some conclusions, including the idea that every museum professional must do personal work to face unconscious bias. Unconscious bias, of course, refers to our automatic, often unspoken beliefs about various social groups. These hidden assumptions influence how we judge the competency of others. They shape our expectations for human interaction and form the basis of prejudicial actions. We all have unconscious bias. Every one of us have these biases, and it is incumbent on us to eliminate this bias, particularly in the United States of America, where we have such a sordid and deep legacy of enslavement and of colonialism, of oppression of various groups of people who are non-white. It's very important to address this in the museum field, where so few positions are available to people who are not white. The author James Baldwin said, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." And so the title of the museum initiative is Facing Change. You can't call it a blind spot if your lack of vision is intentional. So this tells us that once we have learned to eradicate our biases and examine our privilege and prejudice, we are responsible from then on to root it out. So how does this occur in museums? Everywhere from in the boardroom to the classroom to the exhibits on the wall, we must examine diversity. We should not be defensive, and we should not say that just because we might be diverse in one area, we're diverse in all areas. We have to continuously humble ourselves and understand that we must include everyone. Next, we have to look at equity, which is different from equality. Equality means that everyone has the same resources, but equity means that everyone has the resources they need in order to succeed and thrive. And in reality, especially in organizations like museums in the United States and elsewhere, there are organizations that have far more than they need. And individuals are often paid more and are often respected more if they are in higher positions. And those positions have traditionally excluded people of color, people with disabilities, and many others. For accessibility, my colleague Julie will be talking more about that, but this is the 30th anniversary in the United States of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And so this year, many museums are paying very close attention to how they work with people with disabilities. And inclusion really means belonging. Are we wanted? Are we expected? Are we respected? Are we invited to succeed and to participate fully? So diversity is about numerics. It's about counting. How many people are in the room? How many people are on staff in your museum? How many kinds of exhibits about the culture of various groups are represented? Equity is about making sure we have opportunities for advancement, opportunities for growth for everyone. Accessibility usually refers to accommodations for people with disabilities or for accommodations for people who speak languages other than English in the United States. And inclusion means belonging, being respected, being reflected, and being expected. Diversity sometimes deals with the differences that make a difference in a contextual way. So when we talk about diversity in the US, often we mean related to people who are LGBTQIA from those communities, or older employees over the age of 40, people with disabilities, people with economic need, people of color, such as Black, Indigenous, Brown, and other people of color, women, and new immigrants to the United States. You have heard about the unrest that has been occurring. It has occurred for many hundreds of years, actually, in the United States, but recently, and particularly after the death of George Floyd, after his murder in May of 2020, many museums this year are finally understanding their responsibilities towards people of color, and especially Black people. And so they are looking at their relationship with white privilege, what that means. There's a wonderful article by Dr. Peggy McIntosh of Wellesley College that explains many ways in which white people have certain privilege in the United States that is not afforded to people of color, such as white privilege is like an invisible knapsack of special provisions that white people may have as they move through the world. A few very small examples are, number one, a white person can, if they wish, arrange to be in the company of people of their race most of the time, which is not the case for people of color, and that is true in museums. Also, number 5, they can go shopping alone most of the time, assured that as white people, they will not be followed or harassed. This is not true for many people of color, especially in the United States. Dr. McIntosh identifies 30 instances, and I'm quickly going to go through the slides, but I'm not going to read each one. But there are many cases that Dr. McIntosh found where people of color are discriminated against on a regular basis. So what does that mean? It means that just as hard as we are trying to eradicate the plague of COVID-19, we need to eradicate racism, and we need to eradicate homophobia in all of our spaces, in all of our museums, and in the entire world. So this requires a cultural change. It requires an individual commitment, individual work that is authentic and continuous. It requires collective work as museum staffs that must happen, whether or not we are uncomfortable. We have to assume the best intentions of each other and also develop trust and team building. We have to name, define, and acknowledge the harms that we are aiming to redress. I want to thank you and defer to my colleague. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cecile, for bringing into play this further perspective. And I think, you've touched on the idea of belonging that very much, perhaps one could argue, underpins a lot of what has been said today. I feel there has been a sense of museums having to rethink really who they speak to and who they belong to and who they serve at the end of the day. And I think everyone has touched on this from very different perspectives. We are running quite behind time, and I'm sorry I haven't been a better timekeeper here. I know that Fabio unfortunately needs to leave us quite soon, so I wonder whether Julie would be happy for him to go first. Yes, I see a thumbs up. And I understand that everything is resolved with your presentation, Julie. We think so. We might. Okay. I guess let's hope for the best. So I'm going to go back to Italian now. Torno a parlare in italiano e passerei la parola al dottor Pagano, che mi comunica che deve lasciarci a breve. Mi dispiace che siamo un po' indietro con i tempi, ma è un panel con tante persone e tanti temi interessanti, quindi passo a presentare il dottor Pagano e poi passo la parola a lui.
Mr. Pagano is the director of the Archaeological Park of Campi, Flegrei. He has worked within Ministry of Cultural Heritage and Touristic Activities starting from 2012. He's been director of National Archaeology Museum of Cividale del Friuli in the northern part of Italy, as well as the Roman Theatre in Spoleto, as well as the archaeological area of Carzule, and he has worked for some time at the General Directorate of Museums. So once again, or here again, we are welcoming a speaker with a very prestigious background, and I am sure will tell us about the representation of the past can actually impact and have to do with current times where we're all aiming for further inclusion. I leave the floor to Fabio Pagano. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Flavia, for anticipating my topic. I will be here till 5 o'clock, but I was afraid that I wouldn't have had time to introduce my presentation. Well, I hope you can see. Yes, I see thumbs up. So my attempt today is to reason around some of the topics that have been based upon, providing my own contribution, my own perspective. I'm speaking on behalf of my colleagues with whom I'm currently working at the Archaeological Park in Campi Flegrei. The attempt is again to touch base the topic, and I'd love to share with you the common denominator that I've been able to highlight while managing and let's say having to do with such an important historical heritage. So we're talking through Archaeological Park. We have our feet on the ground. Definitely it is a truly diversified reality, and that has impacted also the way we developed our strategy. And our strategy has been defined well before, had been defined well before pandemics hit. We had already defined some practices, but then we had to adjust some of them because of the lockdown. So end of 19, we had defined the strategy and then we changed it, we adjusted it. So it is, as I said, a very unique heritage. In this case, Archaeological Park is broadly disseminated all around Naples area, and from a geological viewpoint is strongly diversified, and the natural landscape is very unique, and actually includes all in all 25 different sites. All of these sites, they have their own histories, and they are well and nicely fenced. So we are actually dealing with 25 different archaeological sites / museums, and each one of them has their own relationship with one another, well defined within this general landscape. And this is what we started from, basically. And of course, it was difficult to manage from, and we understood that right on that one, although we understood there was a lot of potential for development. So this strategy has to do with this very peculiar landscape, different from other parks, which are more traditional, if you will, Paestum, Pompeii, Ercolano, although perhaps Paestum is not the best example to mention, as it is greatly diversified as well. But in this case, as I said, 25 sites widely disseminated on 4 different areas, meaning municipalities, and they're all having their let's say unique selling point, if you will. The Archaeological Park of Cuma, the castle from Aragona, and let's say that some of these sites, they actually seem to be way more appealing with respect to others. And these others, they're kind of around this as satellites, if you will, satellites around the main planet, the key planets. But once again, as I said, what was key for our strategic plan was to make people knowledgeable about what was available to visit. And let's say that the ministry allowed our part to be fully recognized from a legal viewpoint some 4 years ago. So we wanted this place, this part now, to give voice to this 25 sites. As I said, they're all nicely fenced, and whereas there's no barrier all around, so they're fenced amongst them, but not with the rest of the landscape. And as I said, we also had to adjust our strategy right after the pandemic hit. Although, let me say that some some of the attitude we had already adopted were fairly stringent from day one, as if we were expecting pandemic to hit. So what was our key attempt? Well, to further develop relationship with audience and the community, and we started to manage the overall heritage first. So this is what we did between October and December. In those months, we were, as I said, defining the first strategy, and we were executing the very first action, through which we wanted to provide some answers to some management issues in terms of how to support effectively with the right personnel, with the right staff at 25 different sites.
So to the question, how shall we improve our service, the accessibility to the park? Well, the answer was trying to create more relations for the reasons that I tried to explain to you earlier. That is to say, some areas in the park, well, and you know, archaeologists know very well Piscina Mirabilis di Parco, as you can see on the left. Well, the biggest water tank produced and left by the Romans in the Mediterranean, all over the temple of Pozzuoli. So these are two areas where the park, well, never managed to provide accessibility. And so they said, look for a partnership between private and public, and therefore, based on the legal regulations, even if we don't know exactly, well, we don't have all the rules clear, we still have to study. But anyhow, we tried to find a partnership between the public and private sector in order to promote the value of these two places. And well, for 3 months, we had a set of activities, a dialogue that we tried to create involving the public and the private. And now we'll try to explain to you what it was about. So we created the so-called Park of Ideas. Well, Park of Idea related to, you know, the volcano craters, which are typical of our area, the lakes, etc. We asked our community to come to us. It was a call, open call. 136 people answered to the call, and we asked them to bring ideas. So for 3 days, during those 3 days, with a very open dialogue, when we were still defining our strategy, we had 8 discussion tables. And I'm sorry I don't have enough time to show it all to you today. But anyhow, I wanted to show you that we have a very nice representation of young people from 21 to 35 years of age who accepted the proposal. They spent those 3 days with us thinking about the park that was being widened up, enlarged, and we also needed new ideas. We talked to the local institutions, municipalities, trying to explain what we were trying to do. We talked to Pozzuoli municipality, for example. And then, well, we arrived at the closure of this project in January 2020 with a commission that appointed the winning ideas, or elected, announced the winning ideas. Unfortunately, COVID came to our lives and to the life of the archaeological park, so we couldn't start. But, well, first of all, the first action that would have started in an experimental way was frozen. And at the moment, we still have a dialogue about this new governance model. And there are some tools that we have adopted. We have a partnership table, and we also have a permanent workshop on the partnership. So, well, for sure, obviously, we had to work with smart working during the first stage, and well, and then we also had some meetings, in-presence meeting, and during the summer we opened our places. We tried to give life back to these places, and we also tried to involve our new partners. So, as I said, we opened up our doors, and we also, well, between July and August 2020, we also understood something interesting. That is to say, that our this place can be a very interesting scenario. It is an archaeological park, the archaeological park, and its places, surrounding places. Well, it can really engage the population. Obviously, we need to adopt different strategies in order to do that. And we can also be very competitive. So just in a few words, we have signed our partnership contract, and also we had an international competition on, well, how to use the swimming pool. And then and this is, well, this was for younger architects, and we received more than 700 ideas about how to use that space. Proposals, ideas coming from all over the world, and the best ones now are displayed in the castle. Unfortunately, at the moment, it's not possible to visit the castle. So again, we defined our strategies, we looked for answers, and we started this process that sees the park going hand in hand with the strategies. And of course, we had to improve our communication abilities, communication skills. During the first lockdown phase, like all other museums, we kept on talking to our public. We kept on trying to tell things to the public, but always keeping two very solid pillars. First of all, well, awareness of the importance of our collections and heritage, and also, secondly, the importance of co-planning. And well, thanks to this principle of co-planning, we managed to do many things. So, for example, we produced an interactive map, sentiment of social map, which we have called the Park of History. We collaborated with a group from Naples that produces social maps. And we asked them to tell us how they related to the park, and if they could also share it on this platform that is called Un Parco di Storia. And then during those months, as I said, we worked on our heritage. We also, at the same time, kept the dialogue with our public. And well, we focused on a project that had already been planned. It is our park for families. So where our 4 areas are dedicated to families. So they are, let's say, adjusted to families. Families have always chosen the park, especially during the summer. So storytelling, narration for children. But at the same time, of course, we had to build a strategy to do that. it is important to foster participation, and also the Park for Families was supported by interactive guides, so proposals for our families. We also made a questionnaire for the families where we tried to ask them some simple questions in order to have their feedback, because we are sure that right now one of our objectives is to increase our ability to welcome people. So this is it. I'm quite sure of this personally, my personal effort, but I see it's not just my effort, but many other people are trying to understand the current tendencies. In order to do that, we feel the need to have the ability to understand where the wind is blowing at the moment quickly, because in this way we will be able to have our sails navigating in the right direction. So, well, in a few words, we try to intercept, understand the needs of the people by providing value to the heritage. And well, we don't want to be resilient. We want to be able to transform ourselves. We are sure that right now, the current situation is changing, the scenario is changing and will change even more. And well, what we will have to do is we will have to be very quick, ready for future changes and to change some of our strategies. This is all from me. I hope that it didn't take that I didn't take too long. Thank you, Fabio. I'm sorry. Well, there was a connection problem, temporary connection problem. We are already late by 9 minutes. And I know that we still have two speakers, very interesting speakers who will have to speak, who are going to speak. So I'd like to ask them if they can stay with us, because we would be extremely interested in listening to their speeches, obviously. Shall we try and leave the floor to Julie?
And absolutely nothing is happening. So I will give my presentation without visuals, which when I'm talking about accessible design, it's not going to be the best option. I keep trying, but it just nothing's working. So I'm going to present about accessible design and exhibition development at Ingenium. I have a beautiful deck of images to show what I'm talking about, but I'm open to sharing it. I'm being told I should refresh my browser. If I do that, I might lose connection for a moment. So let me just try. Mars. To explore the important relationships between the environment, agriculture, technology, and the food we eat. The Collection and Conservation Center, which was just opened in September, or last September, apologies, is 38,000 square meters of purpose-built, state-of-the-art collection and conservation storage facility, and houses the Digital Research Lab and the Ingenium Research Center. And finally, the Canada Science and Technology Museum, but we're going to back up a little bit on this so we can understand where I'm going. This is what the museum looked like in 1967. It opened in what was a bread factory warehouse on the outskirts of Ottawa, Canada, Canada's national capital, to maintain and demonstrate to visitors the importance of science and technology in every aspect of our daily lives. And at the time, it was deemed a temporary location until a new building site could be identified in the downtown core. Fast forward to September 13th of 2014, and the museum, which was still in the original 1967 location, was forced to shut its doors due to toxic mold from years of a chronically leaky roof. 2 months later, the federal government announced major funding to renovate the building and create new exhibitions. Fast forward again, November 17th, 2017, on its 50th anniversary, the Canada Science and Technology Museum reopened its doors to the public, and we went on to receive the Accessibility Certification Gold rating under the Rick Hansen Foundation Accessibility Certification Program, and we were the first public building to receive this gold certification program. But how did we get there in 3 short years? Well, a lot of work, obviously. But first, we needed to come to terms with something. Accessibility is hard, and it can be expensive, and it can be time-consuming. And we expected that we would probably make some mistakes, but we decided to do it anyways. And it wasn't just going to be making things to code, because accessibility doesn't mean just the turning radius of a wheelchair. We decided accessibility to us was being accessible to all audiences, and we did that by flipping our notion of accessibility or of disability. The fact that someone uses an assisted device doesn't make them disabled. It is actually the environment that we have created or built that gives them the disability. And with this new perspective in mind, we wanted to create the most accessible experience for all of our audiences. In early of 2014, actually before our museum shut down, we started working on accessibility. We had reached out to other institutions like the Canadian Museum of Human Rights to find out what they were doing. And we consulted with the City of Ottawa and the Council of Canadians with Disabilities. And we also hired an external consultant. And what better way to put all of this new information that we had gathered into starting a new museum, basically from scratch. As we went through the development process for new museums, teams started to create advisory groups. So we had them for research, educational programming, visitor experience, exhibition and interactive design. And what worked really well with these groups was that we didn't make them overly formal. We kept them engaged on an ongoing basis, and we kept them open to allow people to kind of come and go as they pleased. And what we learned from these advisory groups was their mantra: nothing about us without us. And these groups were thrilled to have a voice at the table, but they were also going to hold us accountable. So what we did to try and meet their needs and expectations was we actively listened. We worked closely with the advisory groups and designers, and together we tested, and we tested, and we tested, and we tested, and we tested with general audiences, we tested with other needs groups. But if you're going to do all this consultation and all this testing, you have to be willing to accept that you will make mistakes, and be willing to go back to the drawing board and rethink or redesign your idea. And a big challenge with accessible design is having designers on board who are open to finding out their designs don't work, and they're open to the iterative process. So now we include our accessibility standards document in all of our design RFPs with our potential designers, so that they know what the process will be and what will be expected of them. But we also discovered that there may be some instances where exceptions might be needed. So we didn't want this to happen accidentally or after the fact rationalizations. we developed a process whereby any deviation from the accessibility standards had to be presented to the Director General for official approval or rejection. And if rejected, we needed to go back to the drawing board and try again. As we developed the exhibition that made all of our visitors feel safe and welcome, we realized that we also wanted them to see themselves in the exhibition. And we wanted to go beyond equal representation in photos and images. And this is when the accessibility standards then led to changes in the way that we collect artifacts and do research. The new Canada Science and Technology Museum opened with an exhibition dedicated to adaptive technology for outdoor activities called Adapted Adventures. And curators actively went out to find and acquire the latest in adaptive technologies being developed in Canada, and also found some of the most inspirational stories. And it went beyond being able to tell some incredible stories. This is a picture of a hockey sledge that is on display in the museum. And one day on a guided tour, a group of kids was there, and a little boy rolled over to the display in his wheelchair, and he said, "Yay, I'm in the museum." We looked at him, we said, "Yeah, you are in the museum, and let's go explore it a little bit more." And then he looked at us a little incredulously, and he pointed to the sledge, and he said, "No, I play sledge hockey, that's me." And he was thrilled to see himself represented in the museum, and it changed his entire experience. Once we opened, we started to reach out to more groups to have them come into the museum, walk through, let us know what we got right, what missed the mark, and what we got completely wrong. These consultations really helped us determine what our remedial priorities would be. And obviously, we would have liked to have done more of this prior to the opening, but building 9,000 square meters of new exhibitions at the same time as building a brand new museum, all in less than 3 years, our timeline was a little tight. So we did what we could in the time we had. At the end of everything, we were able to develop the formal accessibility standards document, which has been thoroughly put to the test and now implemented across all 3 of our museums. This is a living document that we continuously update as we learn about and develop more accessible products with our advisory groups. This document includes measurement-based standards for the built environment, standards for accessible seating, visibility and legibility, audio and digital content, and mechanical interactives. And all of these standards also provide suggestions for accessible alternatives. And I'm very happy to share this document with anybody who would like it. We're an open concept and open data museum, so we are happy to share all of our information. So to summarize, here are some of our biggest lessons learned. Developing exhibitions that are fully accessible is hard, but we still need to do it. Reach out to a variety of groups and start consultations as early as possible. Make sure to get buy-in from all levels, especially from those who control the budget, as designing and building accessible experiences can increase both your budget and your production time. Make sure to have solid documentation that will support your decisions. And finally, don't forget representation. So thank you so much. I know I spoke very quickly, and hopefully there's some good discussions that will happen afterwards. And once again, thank you.
Julie, thank you, Julie. Unfortunately, I'm being told that we have less than 5 minutes left, which obviously is not ideal for Eva, who has been very patiently waiting. Stavo dicendo che mi comunicano che abbiamo meno di 5 minuti rimasti e che bisogna chiudere.
So they are telling me that we have less than 5 minutes left. I'm really sorry because Eva waited so patiently, and she's been waiting so patiently to speak. And but she won't be able to speak. I'm so sorry. I don't know if she wants to say something, just a couple of words, maybe. Well, good evening. Do I have 5 minutes? So, well, very simply, I could share my screen. Maybe just the first page. This is the National Archaeological Museum of Taranto, our museum. It is located in the south of Italy in Taranto. It's actually a very important place because it was one of the capital cities of Magna Graecia and ancient Greece, Magna Graecia, with very important archaeological pieces from prehistory to Middle Ages and well, it is located in Taranto, that is actually very well known in the world for being an industrial city. For well, we have the most important steel production area in Europe. The city is notorious for pollution and many social and economic problems, and not really for its culture. So our project was about transforming this museum from 1887. So the second most important archaeological museum in Italy after Naples Museum. We wanted to turn this museum into an education and research center. We wanted it to be an inclusion center for active citizenship, and we wanted it to become an instrument of territorial governance. The claim that we chose was past for future, how the past can be used in order to take the community towards a model of development that is different from the current one, based on culture, thanks to archaeology that allows us to know our roots, discover our roots. As a model of inclusion, since the museum has to be an instrument for building a sense of belonging for the community, well, we decided to create some maps for the city of Taranto. So, inspired by the maps made in the 80s in London, we made this community map for the city of Taranto, working with students of secondary schools in order to get to know the territory better, in order for them to be aware of the territory where they live, reinforce a sense of community and identity, and also relaunch typical products and give value to the territory. I'd just like to show you some photos of the young students who drew their map. Actually, they went from not loving their territory to falling in love with their territory, so total inclusion. Another inclusion project is our research project together with the University of Foggia, Fish and Chips. It's actually an acronym for a very important project. We worked with a community of fishermen from Taranto so that the sea, and in Taranto, of course, we have the sea close to the city, and we tried to create some community maps. The fishermen came to the museum. They showed their fishing techniques, not isolated, but together with our curators and archaeologists, showing the fil rouge that links ancient fishing techniques to modern fishing techniques. And we also talked about naval carpentry, which is another part of the Fish and Chips project. So we managed to give identity back to the community, and it is now a project that is actually driving our tourism. We went back to our traditions. Another inclusion project together with migrants, with the Centers for Asylum Seekers. So we tried to relate the migration of the past with the current migration. African migrants came to take part in the project. Some of the migrants were blind, so you can see our tactile visit to the museum. And I'd like to tell you another project. So how to show our cultural heritage through a digital archive consisting of 40,000 works of art. So another type of inclusion. I'd like to thank you all with this Benjamin Franklin sentence. Thank you. Well, fantastic, Eva. This was really an excellent presentation in terms of efficacy in a very short time. And honestly, I must say it was extremely interesting. So I can't wait. I really hope that I will be able to come and see you. Because what you do and what you said in the beginning, going from the past to the future, I think this is the most important thing that we can do in Italy, considering the heritage we have in Italy, and considering we have to protect it, and at the same time take it to the future. So I'm very sorry that we didn't have time for a debate or for question and answers. But I hope that the public could receive lots of food for thought. Well, thank you again. Thank you for staying with us.
I can only apologize for that. Grazie mille a tutti.